So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for waking up the audience, including me. Well, I'll not repeat, what our fellow presenters were talking from the morning. Good afternoon, and I'm Vasudevan. I'll be talking today about the importance of simplifying tax compliances and role of technology. The topic seems obvious, like, what is there to talk, whether it is important to stay, to simplify the tax compliances. Isn't it very obvious? Yeah, everything should be simplified. But I'll just add few pointers, why government wants to simplify the tax compliances and at a macro level. And I also talk about why or how the companies, at our local level, micro level can simplify the tax compliances and what role the technology plays and how we can tap it so that we can simplify the compliances at a micro level. Okay. Paying tax is one of the most universal, frequent, and potentially critical interaction that citizens have with the government. It's very regular that each and every person has to pay tax one way or the other, whether it can be by way of income tax or by way of indirect taxes. Even if you buy something, everyone will pay taxes. So it's a regular interaction with the government. As per the study reported by IMF, a typical developing economy collect just 15% of their GDP by way of taxes. It's very low compared to the developed economy who collects up to 40% easily by way of tax. Why tax is important? Everyone knows, because that is in need of doing the social services, healthcare, education, etc. If paying tax was seen to be as easy, straightforward, and robust and fair, then the individuals and business will be voluntarily willing to do the compliances, isn't it? That's why it's very important for any government, for that matter, to have a unambiguity tax legislation so that business and the individual taxpayers will voluntarily go and pay tax and be compliant. Why do we need to simplify tax compliances? Why government is taking so much of effort, lots of effort in simplifying the tax compliances every now and then? It's a continuous process. Why? Mainly to make it more compliant. So let's not talk about interest penalty at this point of time. If someone says like, why do you need to wear helmet? You should not answer that, if I don't wear helmet, the police person will catch a penalty. That's not our answer. You should think why in a different perspective, okay? Why tax needs to be simplified? Because that's the way to do. That's the way to make the citizens pay the tax and stay compliant. And to widen the tax base and improve the tax compliances. That is one of the main focus of the government. They want to widen the tax base. How they can do it? Only by simplifying the tax compliances. If it is so complex, there will be some set of people who will never do the tax compliances. If you want all of them to come under the tax bracket, you need to make it very simplified. For example, the GST collections which is happening, right? Like it's almost 1.65 lakhs crore, which is like 1.65 trillion compared to the old regime of sales tax. Even if you take the inflation for that matter, the collection would not have come so much like how they are collecting in GST if the GST filing process is not simplified, isn't it? And they also want to promote entrepreneurial skills in India, isn't it? A person who wants to be an entrepreneur, they should have clear-cut mindset saying that I want to do the business in a particular way, promote employment opportunity for others, etc., without worrying about tax compliances. If they need to keep on worrying about the compliances, they will not focus on being an entrepreneur. Okay? So we have a testimony of many startups and unicorns. Why? Because government is simplifying the tax structure. And there should be a better tax structure for a better investment. It's very important if a company or a country wants to view positively across the globe. There should be a very stable and simplified tax structure. Today, India is the 5th largest economy in the world. There is a continuous effort, note the word, continuous effort to attract a global investment and to drive economic growth. To do that, the main and the only way is to do a better tax collection and simplifying the tax process, tax collection, which will lead to better economic investment. Government can attract better economic investment, which will lead to higher development in the country, which will in turn lead to a better quality of living for the citizens. That is why government always aims for a continuous simplification of the compliances. How they are doing it? What is the proof that they are doing it? Number one, can you check how the tax filing happened, say, prior to 2000 and how it is happening now? It can be, say, income tax, how it used to happen. People used to spend so much of time in doing a manual clerical checkup, whether this number is flowing from there to here, arithmetical errors are there or not. But now it's so simple. We can get all the data, including AIS, all the validations from 26 AIS. It has become almost pretty simple nowadays compared to how it was, say, 2000, prior to 2000. And you can take the indirect taxes. GST has become almost easier because government is providing you so much of facility for validations in their inbuilt databases that you cannot make mistakes. Even if you make mistakes, you know that there is a mistake even before there is an assessment which is getting picked up. And GST collections, which we have already mentioned, it's a testimony. Can you see income tax has been simplified? GST has been simplified to an extent. Where are we still struggling? Where is government still struggling? To an extent on the customs and EXIM, because it's not yet that simplified, okay, as expected or as it is done in the other regime. What is the result? Result is it is still showing us so complicated, right? If someone is handling customs, you can understand the pain what they are going through, even for a normal procedural transactions, correct? So even for a normal filing, they have to spend 1 or 2 days because the process is not yet simplified completely. However, there has been initiatives and efforts even in those segments. For example, there is an AOE status. If someone is into the relevant sectors, they know if you get an AOE status, some of your compliances need not be done. It's assumed that you are a compliant taxpayer, you need not do that. Okay, and also star export houses. So government is also trying to simplify in those domain. Okay, now it's at the macro level. At a micro level, what we can do and how we can do. Before that, I'll just touch upon something called technology. Why technology? What is the role technology plays? Now there is data everywhere, isn't it? Earlier there used to be a situation where there were no data, people were search of data. Okay, if you can able to find somewhere some file from the rack and then go and give the file, it would be like, wow, like you are a great person. So because the data was searched for 2-3 days and then provided. But now it's not the case. Now it's too much of data, isn't it? Too much of data. So too much of unstructured data, I'll put it that way. So according to a survey, 60% of the data workers are not satisfied with the data quality, isn't it? So you have so much of information. Which information you will pick up? There lies the role of the technology. Unstructured data is booming nowadays so much, leading to the data credibility issues. If you have so much of dump of information, suppose if officer is asking for information, you should give a table summary, officer will get convinced. Suppose if you give a full dump of information, what they will look into it? So they will lose credibility on the way you are submitting the information. So you cannot satisfy your internal stakeholders by giving a dump of unstructured data. You cannot satisfy your external stakeholders, government, shareholders, whoever it is, with your dump of irrelevant data. So you need to have a structured data in place for better decision making. This can be done only by way of technology because of the scale of transactions which we are going through nowadays. There are traditional dashboards. Some people say, I have a very good Excel templates which can give you a very good dashboard and give the data what we want. I agree to an extent because that may provide an high-level overview and sometimes easily digestible information what is required at a small scale level. However, they still fall short in delivering detailed insights. If you want to scale up to a different level, you want to make an informed decision with the data which is available in few minutes rather than waiting for a standard set of analytical data for few days, isn't it? There is a big transformation which is required. That is why it is very important we should leverage suitable technology, not the technology what is so popular, because what is suitable to one industry may not be and will not be suitable for any other industry. So you should know what is suitable to your industry and then use the technology to unlock the insights from the existing data. So now I'll switch back, and come to the simplification of taxation at the micro level. First of all, why do we need to simplify? Okay, because the lawmakers are attempting to simplify the data because they want to spend more time in analysis rather than spending too much of complicated things. For example, as you can see nowadays, government is not bothered about small things which used to be a bigger things earlier. For example, now their focus is to match and reconcile, say for example, your turnover. Okay, they are matching the turnover from the GST and the income tax and the financials. If there is a mismatch, you will be asked to explain what is the difference. Is there a situation where there cannot be a mismatch? Between books and income tax, I agree to an extent you cannot have a mismatch. Between income tax and turnover and the GST turnover, 100% there will be a mismatch. I'll tell you why. If you are operating in more than one location, suppose say if you are operating in 10 different locations, what is the cumulative GST turnover? Will be turnover 1 till 10, isn't it? At a company level, that may not match because when you do a stock transfer, you need to transfer the goods from one location to another location, okay, with a markup, isn't it? So which means there will be an extra turnover sitting in the another locations. How do you justify? You need to do a reconciliation saying that say 1 to 10, if you blindly add up, it will not match. However, you need to make certain adjustments by way of stock transfer and certain other adjustments, then the net will match with the turnover, so then there is no reconciliation issue. Right? We have an indirect tax expert who will be talking about that in the next session. So that is where your role come into play. So there is the way you justify with your documentation and explanation matters. How can you do that? If you have a proper technology, okay, and if that can take care of all the non-value add activities, you can focus more on the value add reconciliations which can be facilitated and which is what the tax authorities are expecting. For example, I can give you some examples. There was an amendment in the TCS on sale of goods, TDS on purchase of goods. How many companies were doing it manually? I doubt. Because manually you cannot do the tracking because the percentage is just 0.1 and purchase and sale transactions are numerous. You cannot do a manual aspect. What you need to do, if you are having an ERP, mandatorily you need to have a patch so that this will be inbuilt in the technology so that you need not, or the person who is raising an invoice need not take any extra effort to do the compliances. So you should have a proper process and a system in place so that these compliances can be simplified. Then there is something called GST non-filer. So if you know that in GST it is not just sufficient, if you are compliant, it's also sufficient the people with whom you are dealing with, your vendor is also compliant. It is like a road, okay? Only if you drive properly, you cannot avoid road accident. So even the person who is coming from the opposite side, they also drive properly, isn't it? Otherwise, the loss is yours. So similarly, if you are having a dealing with your vendor, they need to file the returns properly by quoting your invoice transactions. Only then your company can take input tax credit. Suppose if they are not filing it properly, what will happen? The loss is for the company. So what we need to do, we need to track whether they are filing it properly or not. Do we need to do it independently or individually using Excel? The answer is no. You need to simplify this by way of technology. You should have a tool in place which will simply on a click of a button, okay, so suppose if 11th is the due date, say 12, 13, it takes some 2 days to populate because there's a IST return due date on 13th. Say on 14th, you should have a report quickly generated within like 10 minutes or maximum 30 minutes so that it will populate who are your GST non-filers. Then you need to take action. So you should not put your focus on doing an Excel crunching, manually identifying who is a non-filer. Instead, you use the technology and all the non-value added activity, you scrap it. Okay, you avoid it. You just focus more on then sending the details to the accounts payable team, following up with the concerned team to ensure that the GST compliance is done. That is what is expected by the management. Simplify the process wherever possible. Don't do all the non-value added activities. Focus on what is value added. And there are some other reconciliation which people do it. For example, 26 AS reconciliations, right? So we do have some books of account in a large organizations like us. We do have a separate departments who handles various things. So we need to ensure that we connect with all the department, okay? One person will maintain books of accounts based on their information about the TDS credit. But if that credit is not reflecting the 26 years, we should have a mechanism which can quickly fetch the differences so that we can push those people, say a credit control team, to go and follow up with the concerned team members saying that, hey, my system throws an error. Please give me a breakup. How much is the TDS? Why it is not remitted? If not remitted, please go and rectify. We have a very good practical example wherein some information is available in our 26 years, such a very big number, and thankfully we did the reconciliation and we went and told them, why are you quoting our PAN? They said, sorry, by mistake. So they can simply say by mistake, it's a typo. But if we don't act on it, the loss is on the company. Okay? And finally, the e-invoicing and e-way bill and GST filing, we need not highlight it because the speakers from the morning, they have been talking how important technology play a very vital role in that. Because the moment you raise an invoice by e-invoicing, even before the invoice goes to the customer, the data goes to the government, isn't it? The moment e-invoicing is raised, the data, everything goes to the government, okay, and followed by the e-way bill, okay. And now there is a mechanism by the government saying that if there is no e-way bill, there is a catching mechanism which one of the speakers, panel member, explained, because they are also tracking from the FASTag, saying that, hey, you generated e-way bill, but goods are not moving from point A to point B. What are you cheating? Give explanation. How do you give explanation? You should have your own tracking mechanism properly to justify all that. So that is where technology comes into play. Technology is always an enabler. Okay, it's not something rocket science. It is always an enabler. It makes things easier, faster, and when you operate in a large scale, definitely you need to use a technology. Large, like in India, you cannot avoid technology because the lawmakers are adopting technology 3 to 4 times ahead of us. Earlier, companies used to be the first person to implement any new policies or new technology solution, etc. Nowadays, government is many steps ahead, whether it can be an upgradation of MCA data, whether it can be a GST. It's a typical example. They are using AI, artificial intelligence, like whatever name you call it as. Government is much ahead of even the taxpayers. So even if we are not ahead of them, at least we should follow them so that we are compliant. Government is also integrating various tax structures. Okay, that is what I would have touched upon before. Why we want to use a technology? Because in those days, you may have a separate sets of books. Okay, if income tax authorities ask for some information, hey, take this file and go and submit. Matter over. Indirect taxes, this file, go and submit, matter over. Now, that's not the case. You need to have one set of information. Even in the income tax notice, they are asking your complaints about GST. Okay? Suppose if there is an export of goods, government is having an inbuilt backend team who takes those information and trying to match your transfer pricing data. Okay, you are saying for customs purposes, there's an export of goods. Whether the same number is matching with transfer pricing, government is tracking, not the company. Okay. Similarly, the revenue, as I was mentioning, if there is a revenue with GST, income tax, government is tracking and they are throwing up a reconciliation asking us to clarify. So we should also have the advanced tools in such a way that we are well prepared and give our response. Finally, do we have a choice? See, sometimes you do something, if you don't do something, depending on the choices available to us. But now when the lawmakers are having a technology to simplify some of the processes, even if you want to simplify your own work, you need to follow the lawmakers. Finally, people were also, talking about the global compliances, etc. Some of our compliances are going global. Nowadays, even if you are a typical domestic companies who cater only to the domestic market, still you need to interact with many set of personnel globally. So when there is a global compliances, you should interact globally with the same platform, which is a technology, because typically the advanced developed countries, they have already enabled technology in all their aspects. They also follow zero desk policy, right? Like there's no papers on their desk, everything is in the technology. So we also need to march towards that, okay, in case if we want to stand ahead of them. Finally, artificial intelligence, people add a separate session. I also go by that, it's too early too early to comment whether that will be disruptive or it's a facilitative or not. Though people may change the nomenclature saying that digitalization, artificial intelligence, whatever it is. But one thing is for sure, whenever there is a technology, there is a disruption. But whether artificial intelligence will overtake or whether the artificial intelligence will be an entrance to the actual intelligence of human, I will put it in this way. Whenever there's a technology, a person with the knowledge of AI or any other technology tool will definitely overtake the person without the technology and the knowledge. Thank you very much.